Hey, I'm Carla.
Nice to meet you, Carl. I'm John.
John, nice to meet you. Welcome to the Welcome to the board.
650 or 650?
Nice to be here.
Why wouldn't we pick all of those? Oh my God.
Yeah, the other one's term ends as soon as they graduate.
Oh, cool.
The camera guy.
Well, welcome.
Really warm. Are these our new student trustees? These are the new student trustees. Are they on here?
Oh, I just miss him so much. I'm gonna tell him when he comes back.
Don't tell him, then he's gonna get all like,
Carla was like, he's not this kind of guy.
no, he's gonna use it to his advantage. You better not. You know?
Well, you two
She missed
have to be separated. Are you
I don't know what's wrong with this.
I don't know what I'm supposed to do.
You guys are laughing.
Oh my God, I know.
Oh, yeah, does he need to get into agenda online?
To Board of, sorry,
The website?
and then Board of
Board
Trustees.
of Trustees got it. All right, cool.
Then there'll be a link to the agenda.
Girl, it was a weekend of like Pharrell.
Just wanted to put it out there, like, if you did want to.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Okay.
But you can come if you like.
Okay.
All right. All right, I'm calling the meeting to order at 7:07. Can I have a roll call, please?
Good evening, everyone. Mr. Ocampo?
Here?
Mr. Murphy?
Here.
Ms. Tejada? Here. Mr. Ochapinti?
Here.
Mrs. Amy Garrett?
Present.
Aludine?
Here. And then President Lee is out today. So moving on, can I get any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes to the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Call for a vote?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So reporting out on closed session, the board met in closed session. We have nothing to report out at this time. Communications, moving on to our board report, and I will have the elected trustees go first, just so they can have an idea. So do you want to start us off?
Oh,
Rosie?
happens to this. No, I don't want to start. Well, I went to the Westmore graduation. It was a great day. It was a really inspiring day. The speakers were so very, they gave very different speeches, and it was a very diverse group of speakers. And I was just really pleased to be there. And I got to hand diplomas to a lot of the kids I knew since they were little. So it was really special. And then last night I spent my birthday at the county committee for school organization, and which is a body that has to do with, we were at the Cabrillo School District because they needed to, they presented a resolution to do per, to the trustee areas, to elect trustees per area. So they had to break that up into 5 different areas. So anyway, but it is good to be here.
And happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you. Happy belated birthday.
Trustee Ochipinti?
Yeah, I was honored to be at the graduations. It is graduation season. I know there are still different counties and different school districts that are doing that, so including even some in this city. So enjoying the end of the school year and the beginning of the summer. I feel like every graduation I've been to has a lot of shining speeches and beautiful moments, but of course I think it's one of the rewards of being here on the board is to see our students graduate and move on to the next step of their education, to and through. Higher education and other forms of career development. So very proud of this year total. And this summer, I know we have some exciting things going on, so I'll leave it at that. Yeah, being at Jefferson and Oceana, and of course a few other high schools, El Camino and Castlemont as well. So.
I also went to graduation, surprise, surprise, to Jeff, and it was fantastic. I think, as I've expressed to some of the board members here the other night, that it was, I think, by far, that was the highlight of being a board member, being able to see all the students graduate and giving just wonderful and inspirational speeches to their peers. So it was really moving and teary-eyed at some moments. But I think really, like, when you see that happening, it just kind of reconfirms, like, this is why I want to do this. So it was really wonderful. And then post Thornton graduation, I was able to hang out with some of the students here at the gym because they had a basketball tournament between the students and the teachers. So that was a little fun. So I was able to do that. And again, I want to congratulate all the seniors. Hope they get to achieve all their successes in the future, and looking forward to the summer.
Trustee Murphy? Well, do you also want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
So my name's Joe Murphy. I just finished my sophomore year at Terra Nova. I'm a newly elected trustee for Terra Nova. I'm really excited about this position. I don't know a whole lot about it yet. I'm still trying to figure out, all my responsibilities and how this will go, but I'm looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you for this opportunity again, and I think this will be a very good, year, and I think we'll, I'm looking forward to what we can get accomplished together.
Okay, and then remind me, I know your first name, remind me of your last name.
Ocampo.
Ocampo, can I write it down now? Trustee Ocampo?
Hi, I'm John Ocampo. I'm about to become a senior at Jefferson High School, and I'm again, along with Mr. Murphy, really excited to see what we can do here. I'm glad that I could take the opportunity to be a part of this team.
So the board has really put a lot of emphasis on student voice and making sure that we have students representing. And so from our different sites, they're not all able to come all the same time because, teenage life, especially nowadays, they get really busy. But especially summertime, I'm really impressed that both of you showed up. And this is your first board meeting, so thank you so much for being here. We're looking forward to working with you moving into the next school year. And then, so for me, I've gone to the Therapeutic Day School graduation and Oceana's graduation. And they were both super meaningful and powerful in very different ways. The Therapeutic Day School, which is our school here at Jefferson Union High School District, very small school that's here in the DO, that really works with students that don't have intellectual issues, but are more social and emotional issues. So like anxiety disorders and things of that nature. So that their lives can be incredibly challenging, so that the fact that they've reached the goal of getting their high school diploma is so meaningful and powerful. And there's times we've only had one graduate from that school, but this year we had 4, which is awesome. And that is the one graduation in my 8 years of being a board member that I've never missed. And I really think it reflects who we are as a district, and that we show up for our students how they come to us. We don't try to make them into something that we feel they should be. I really feel like we should always be there for our students and as they present and cherish who they are, and really celebrate the multiple pathways to success. There's just not one way to someone's future. There's a lot of different pathways. So TDS kind of embodies that. And their graduation is always a great celebration. And then Oceana is our other small school, but in a different way. And they had multiple valedictorians and salutatorians this year, and their speeches were all fantastic. And I know that's a school that has a really dedicated community service, so to see all the students and all the hours that they've spent out in the community, I think they're another great ambassador for our district, so it was a fantastic graduation. So passing on to superintendent for the report.
Thank you. So I won't repeat what I've already heard. I did, although the Thornton graduation and the TDS graduations were great, I attended the Terra Nova graduation since I was a teacher there, and that was awesome. And the fog lifted, the sun came out, we had a great graduation, and when it was over, the fog came back, and, that's the way that it is. On Monday, I was able to, I attend the Jefferson Council PTA, and we have exec board meetings once a month on Mondays. And Monday was Sharon Murphy's last day. So she's been a great president to the council. Not that she's going too far, because someone has to manage the computer, and I think her daughter has a role as VP of something like that. But they've been good partners to us in our district and have been good to our feeder districts. So I'm sad to see her go and looking forward to working with Serena. And even though the school year's over, this building was full of teachers this week. So we had a group of teachers who were in working on ELD and ELA scope and sequence. We have math teachers who are getting together with me on Friday to work more on scope and sequence. I'm so pleased with the number of teachers who stepped up to teach summer school, because our enrollment in summer school is up. And it's just great to see everybody, even though it's summer, they're all digging in and helping out. So it's been good to see. Thank you.
Okay. So moving on to the consent agenda, I'm suggesting that we pull item 11A.3, the administrative appointment, so we can do those separately. That way we can introduce the one member who's here.
Perfect.
So can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda and with pulling those two items out?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so moving on to item 11A3. So we'll do Stephen, can you tell, what's his?
Ofo.
Ofo? Okay, thank you. So can I get a motion to approve Stephen Ofo in the role of Vice Principal of Westmore?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so congratulations to Mr. Awful. And then second, can I get a motion to approve April Hawkins, who is here in our audience, as Director of Communications and Housing Coordinator?
Motion to approve.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
So she's here, so congratulations. If you'd like to have us say a few words for us, welcome.
Did you want to introduce your family tonight?
So my family came with me today, and I'm so proud to have them here. This is Alejandra, and she just graduated from first grade. And this is Gael, who is 8 months old, and this is his mom, Sophia, who just graduated today. Congratulations! So thank you. I'm looking so forward to joining.
And there's
So it's okay.
And this is the most important part.
And I have a little thing, a little welcome plan for you.
Oh,
We're happy to have you here.
thank you.
So we know you have your family with us, so if you sneak out in the middle of a meeting, we won't hold that against you. But we just, again, want to extend our welcome as a board, and we're very excited on working with you and moving forward. And thank you to your family for showing up on graduation day. That's a lot.
Thank you.
And congratulations on graduating from high
Yes.
school. That is a
Yes.
huge achievement, so thank you. All right, so moving on to our next item, which is public comment. Do we have any blue cards?
We do have some good times.
All right, so just an announcement on public comment are all our items that are not currently on the agenda. As board members, we can only speak to items on the agenda, so we're not able to respond, but we are here to hear what you have to say. There is a time limit, and Ms. Tejada will give you a marker when you have a 1-minute mark and at the 30-minute?
Yeah.
Okay. So
30 seconds.
30 seconds, sorry, not 30 minutes. I would like to go home today at some point. I was like, we just really want to hear what you have to say. No, at the 1-minute mark and at the 30-second mark, Ms. Tejada will give you a signal just so you know you have enough time and you can wrap up your
Right,
comments.
so we do have a lot of cards, so if, when I give you the time, that if you could start wrapping up, just so, we want to make sure everybody gets to speak. Okay. So the first speaker is Shannon Randall.
I'm not sure.
You can come up to the
Oh,
mic.
yeah, you can
Take
just
the
sit
chair
there.
and talk right
And
into
yeah, and the mic is just so that it's captured on the recording.
Alrighty. Okay, is it being captured?
Yeah, I did that.
Okay, okay. Hi, my name is Shannon Randolph, and I'm a tennis teaching professional working out of Pacifica, my beloved hometown. I lost my Oceana tennis coaching job of 11 years in 2016 when I offended a Muslim player. This offense occurred in the context of a good relationship. To illustrate, here's the last text message exchange I had with the student. She said, "Thank you for everything, Coach. The letter, the cookie mix, the tennis keychain, and 4 years of tennis. By the way, amazing mac and cheese." And I said, "You're so welcome. You're one of my favorites." Offending this student was truly not my intention. I did, however, exercise very poor judgment, and I immediately apologized to her afterwards. Subsequent to this student's complaint to the Oceana administration and the loss of my coaching position, I was also informed by the school district that I would no longer be allowed to obtain civic permits to teach private tennis classes using district courts. The stated reason was discrimination. Linking this one school-based incident to my independent private business is making a connection that doesn't exist. The two are distinct and separate. Applying the decision made by Oceana High School to my private business was arbitrary and done without any evidence. I respect and work with all sorts of ethnicities, personal beliefs, and lifestyles. So in addition to losing my coaching job, I was banned from using the district courts. My primary means of livelihood was wiped out. When I met with Assistant Superintendent Tina Van Raaphorst, she stated that the issue of concern was the district being found culpable in the case of any future incidents on my part. However, when I met with Dr. Deloria and provided a solution, or a possible solution, a legal release form that would absolve the district from liability, she did not accept that possibility, and she used the word image to describe her concerns. So I don't know what the outstanding concern is. Is it culpability or is it image? Is everyone who obtains a civic permit investigated to ensure that they uphold a certain image, and that they won't engage in any behavior that could subject the district to claims of culpability? I provide a valuable and desirable service for the community, its tennis players and students, some of whom populate the district high school teams. Yet this has all been wiped away, and I cannot help with any ongoing requests for lessons and training. So I'm asking you all to help me, please work with me to resolve the issue, and instead of just allowing my business to be shut down. And I want to thank you all for your service and for your thoughtful consideration on this matter.
Thank you.
Mike Randall?
Hi, good evening. My name is Mike Randolph. I'm Shannon Randolph's husband. One component of Shannon's situation that she just outlined that doesn't get much attention is the emotional impact it's had on her. She was stunned when she instantly lost her coaching position, and then she was dumbfounded when the consequences for her poor judgment as a district employee were also transferred over to her private tennis business. These disciplinary actions have haunted her for months, and they continue to do so. One of Shannon's highest values has been giving back to the local community, and tennis has been her primary way of giving back to Pacifica, starting back in 2005. This avenue for giving back has been pretty much shut down. She has always wanted to train younger tennis players with the goal of helping them make and then improve their local high school tennis teams. Over 10 of her former students have done so. This avenue for giving back has been pretty much shut down. People vote with their feet, and their feet have brought them to Shannon for tennis lessons. Many of them have continued with her for months and years. She continues to get requests for lessons 2.5 years after being banned from her primary teaching venue, which are the district courts. Few numbers. In the years 2012 to 2016, she taught close to 1,000 lessons per year. So in 5+ years, this totals almost 5,000 lessons. And then as she was building her business from 2005 to 2011, she taught close to 480 lessons a year. So in 7 years, the totals were well over 3,000 lessons. So total number of lessons, what's that?
1 minute.
Okay. Total number of lessons taught in 12 years was well over 8,000. And the 8,000 does not include lessons and camps taught through the Pacifica Parks and Rec. So concluding, so with over 8,000 lessons taught to hundreds of students over 12 years, there has not been one single complaint or hint of impropriety. Not one. So my question is, what is the evidence used to support this permanent ban?
30 seconds.
Okay. I think this lifetime ban by the school district was a one strike and you're out verdict. And I think this lifetime ban fits the definition of unjust quite well. Thank you for your thoughtful consideration of the matters raised here. Thanks.
Helena Pachova?
Hi, I'm a Pacifica resident, and Shannon Randolph has been teaching my son tennis for several years now. My son has taken her summer camps and after-school classes through the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Department. He always wants to go back for more, because Shannon makes the classes fun, and he says there's a lot of variety in what they do. He doesn't get bored. And his parents feel like he's really improved his tennis skills, so that makes us happy too, because we all enjoy it as a family. And it doesn't seem right to me that Shannon can no longer teach for the Jefferson School District. She's very personable and caring and conscientious. She's always early for her classes. She gives us feedback on how our son is doing, and she offers advice on tennis skills development. I would like him to do more with her, but we've been unable to be able to arrange private or group lessons with her because of the situation. And I'd like him to be able to do more than he can get through the Parks, Beaches, and Recreation Department. Those classes are great introductions, but I want to see his skills develop, and he really enjoys working with Shannon. So I'm hoping that you'll consider reinstating her civic permits very soon. Thank you.
Jesse Randall?
Hi, my name is Jessie Randolph. I'm Shannon Randolph's daughter. I'm here to support my mom and stand up against social injustice. My mom is the highest caliber person I know, a woman of integrity and honor through and through. When Oceana High School forced my mom to resign from her coaching job in 2016, my family and I were devastated and shocked with her. I watched her weep as she tried to grapple with an incredibly harsh decision that wiped out one of the best and most enjoyable parts of her life. I watched as she pleaded and contested her case time and again, only to be repeatedly dismissed by the Oceana administration, the facilities director, the assistant superintendent, and the superintendent. I watched her crushed under disappointment and humiliation brought by the school district as they punished her for a single mistake, knowing full well her impeccable track record of 11 years. To add insult to injury in an act of definable discrimination, they then forced her off the courts and single-handedly destroyed her flourishing personal tennis business as well. And yet, even behind closed doors, where no one would hear, my mom never said a word against her accusers. There's a story of old set 2,000 years ago of a fair judge and a woman caught in the middle of an affair. In those days, the punishment for such a crime was death by stoning. When the woman was caught, the vicious crowd wanted payment for her crime, and they came to the good judge for a hearing. They told him, "This woman was caught in adultery. What do you say is her punishment?" The honest judge considered before answering. After some time, he replied, saying, "All right, you may have your justice, but first, let me ask you a question. Are any of you blameless from any mistakes? Do any of you claim to be completely upright in the timeline of your lives? Can any of you throw the first stone at this woman?" Silence fell among the crowd. One by one, every person turned and walked away, leaving until only the wise judge and the woman remained. He came to her and said, "Where are your accusers? Does anyone condemn you?" She replied, "No, sir, no one is left." He said with compassion, "Then go, because neither do I." I leave you with this. Have any of you lived a life free of mistakes? Can anyone here claim to be innocent on all accounts? Have you never done something you regretted and wished you could take back? I believe there is enough mercy and grace for everyone in this world. Will you throw the first stone at a morally upright woman of integrity here in your midst? Or will you judge fairly and bring restorative justice to right what has been wronged? There's a reason people showed up to defend my mom tonight. I ask you to consider seriously her plea and case, and I thank you for your time and consideration.
Janine De Rivera.
Do you recall ever been given a second chance? My name is Janine Diaz de Rivera. Shannon belongs back on the tennis courts, period. She has been penalized enough in losing her livelihood for merely sharing who she is. She reached out to someone needing help with the best of intentions, but sadly in an overblown fashion. The punishment needs to fit the offense, and this case just doesn't meet that. The tennis court community looks forward to see Shannon back on the public tennis courts. Shannon Randolph deserves a second chance. On behalf of a fellow tennis player, my name is Anna Koltak, and I am an immigrant from Eastern Ukraine, and I'm of the Orthodox Christian faith. My faith and its traditions are very important to me. I have been coached by Ms. Randolph for several years. And throughout that time, I have never once felt that she had anything but respect for my faith and identity. We discussed the differences in our traditions. For instance, Christmas and Easter are celebrated at different times of the year and very differently than they are in the United States. I have never felt that Ms. Randolph ever wished me to convert or abandon any of the tenets of my faith and traditions. I have witnessed her showing the same level of respect for all the identities of the diverse group of people she coaches. She's a kind, caring, open-minded, and generous person, and any disrespect someone has even felt from her can only be due to a misunderstanding. I fully support her being allowed to coach on public property. Thank you.
Teddy Diaz de Rivera.
Good evening. My name is Teddy Diaz de Rivera, and I'm here to read a statement from a co-tennis player, Chris Sims, who is a resident of Pacifica. This is in regards to Shannon Randolph getting reinstated to get civic permits to teach on the courts at the Jefferson Union School District, as well as accessibility to the courts and facilities in general. We have been deeply saddened that Shannon has not been able to teach our two kids recently. It's such a shame that yet another activity has been denied to our children, and we are forced to look outside of Pacifica. I've known Shannon for almost 10 years and have always felt that she was a great teacher and role model to my children. Having children of mixed ethnicity, gender, and skill level has not been an issue whatsoever, and both of them absolutely love Shannon, as I do. I sincerely hope you will reinstate her permits soon. I would also like to comment on the abhorrent and seemingly arbitrary availability of the facilities at both Oceana and Terra Nova high schools. I have been given the runaround by the school, PBNR, and the district in terms of responsibility. I have attempted to access the tennis courts at Oceana in particular and found them locked at least many dozens of times over the years. And I find it appalling that this is occurring. Mind you, this is not during holidays or school hours, and every facility in San Francisco and Daly City are open. It was a major decision for us to have our son attend Oceana because we believe in public schools. But this is yet another reason why people don't embrace and support Pacifica high schools. Thank you for redoing the courts at Oceana. They look great through the fence. And I appreciate your considering my opinion. Sincerely, Chris Sims. Thank you.
Ben Kinkas?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to speak. I didn't come with a prepared speech, but I just wanted to heartfully express my sadness that our beloved coach, Shannon Randall, has been banned from teaching us community tennis players that live in Daly City and Pacifica. As you know, we are a strong group of close-knit friends, and we consider ourselves family. And these turn of events have felt like a disruption in a family that's been torn apart because their fearless leader has been pulled away from them. And we are adults, but I know that Shannon also teaches well children of all ages, from toddlers to high school students. And all of us, I cannot imagine that all of us be left without any teacher or leader that will guide us as we improve in our tennis. So please, I implore you to lift the ban on Ms. Randall. Thank you.
David Jeffers?
My name is David Jeffries. I'm a resident of Daly City. I'm here to speak on behalf of Shannon Randolph. I've known her now for about 4 years. I've taken lessons from her. And from a beginner, I just started playing tennis. My spouse, Benjamin, got me into it as he's a lifelong player. And I really appreciate her ability and her kindness. As someone who's also an atheist, I believe the matter at hand and how the district has handled her firing and then banning her from teaching is just unjust. It's as if she's being treated as a criminal, and it's actually, she's being treated worse than a criminal, because a criminal gets due process. She received no due process. She was just basically told, you can't teach here for life. You're banned from these schools. That's wrong. And we need to allow her, I mean, everyone makes a mistake. She needs to be able to teach this community. And I implore on you to allow her to teach again. Thank you.
Janice Williams?
Hi, my name is Janice Williams, and I don't really have anything prepared, but what I want to tell you is I'm an older woman, and I wanted to learn or relearn how to play tennis. And I'm a Pacifica resident, and unfortunately, there was no avenue in Pacifica, even though it has several schools that have really nice tennis courts. There was no classes available. So I had to go to San Bruno for classes. And, you know, I was a beginner, so I needed to take beginning classes. So when I found out about Shannon and her classes, I was thrilled because it was local, and she is a great teacher. She has so much patience with me. Sometimes I leave the class and it's like, oh, that poor woman, I'm never going to be good at this game, but she has so much patience with me and always explaining everything. So I really feel it's been, since she hasn't been able to teach or get permits at Oceana, it's kind of, even though we have a close-knit group of really, all levels, we love playing together, but we still need our leader to really coach us, and we're missing that. And Teddy kind of mentioned it, that, that Pacifica doesn't have any public courts, really. The only public courts we have are the school courts. And so it's very detrimental to the community because, Shannon can't, she can't teach right now or have a permit, but so that it's detrimental to the community because there's no public courts, really. So what I'm asking is if she could get reinstated, because it's just, she provides a community service and an affordable community service too. And that's a big plus in this Bay Area, because as we know, everything is so expensive. And she really provides the services that are affordable, and she provides great coaching and leadership. So please reconsider and to get Shannon back the permits she needs to continue to teach. Thank you.
Andrew Barra, or V-A-R-A.
I don't have really much, but I'm a fourth grader at Ocean Shore, and for maybe less than a year, Shannon taught me tennis. It was super fun, like everything. And then all of a sudden I heard that she wasn't playing at Oceana. She wasn't doing it at Oceana. I did it a little while with her at Terra Nova, and then I couldn't take tennis lessons all of a sudden. Tennis was really fun, and she was practically one of the only people in Pacifica or near me that could teach tennis. She even taught at my school for after-school classes. And it was super fun, but now I hear that she can't teach anymore. And it would be fun for lots of other people to be taught a fun game, a fun sport. And I would really like you to either reconsider or let her permission back for teaching at Ocean Shore. Oceana, sorry.
Janice Hong.
That's so emotional.
Hi. First of all, I just want to say thank you for letting me come and speak, and I want to thank Coach for inviting me here today as well. My name is Janice. I'm 22 years old, and I graduated from Oceana High School in 2014, and I've been Coach Randolph's student for 4 years. When I first entered high school, I knew I wanted to join the girls' tennis team. I just remember feeling really nervous just because I've never played tennis before, and I just, I admire the sport just from watching it on TV, so that's why I decided to join. I didn't really know what to expect, was feeling really nervous, and, going into the first practice, didn't really know what to expect, and, meeting Coach Randolph and having her welcome me in with open arms, knowing full well I don't even know how to hold on to the racket, it was really, really special. getting that one-on-one attention. And, you know, she taught me a lot from the basics of holding the racket to swinging, and also just in general life skills to like being a team player and working with other teams and other schools. And really the most important thing that she taught me was, of course, you know, the integrity of the sport. And that's something I respected, you know, Coach the most, was her love of tennis and her willingness to teach, because it's really hard to teach tennis, and I've tried it, so I know it takes a lot of patience, and, you know, it's a skill that not everyone has, and I give a lot of props to Coach for that. And, you know, hearing that she cannot teach anymore at Oceana really broke my heart, just because, you know, today tennis is a really big part of my life, and, you know, it's one of my hobbies. You know, thanks to Coach, I, you know, rose to singles 2 by the end of the year. I got, you know, I was rewarded with being the most improved player for 2 years straight. And, you know, tennis is a big part of my life, and I have to thank Coach for that. And I really want her to continue to share that love, you know, of playing tennis to, you know, young girls and guys out there. And I just, yeah, it would be really great if you guys can reconsider looking at her case.
Hal Bonner?
Yeah, hello, Hal Bonner. I'm a resident of Pacifica. I've lived here for a long time, probably 40 years at least, maybe more. I've been playing tennis for a long time, and one of the things that is apparent and obvious is that there's only a few courts in Pacifica, and they're all controlled by the school district. So basically banning Shannon from the high school courts means that she's banned from teaching tennis in Pacifica, which is, in my opinion, a very disappointing and sad and unfair situation. It's disappointing and unfair. You've heard a great deal already tonight. I'm not going to repeat any of that, but to me it seems the situation that she's been put in is extremely unfair. But you're not only punishing her, you're punishing many, many, many students, kids, from learning tennis from a very capable coach, which it's just antithetical to me to an educational institution to be doing that. Well, okay. Anyway, I strongly support your reinstating her. I'm asking you please to do that. Also, I'm frankly a little puzzled about the process. As you already heard, somebody's raised a point about due process. But yet tonight you are apparently unable to discuss this matter. So I'm very curious about, will you, as a group, discuss it at some time? I would urge you, if that at a minimum you put this on an agenda and have a public discussion about it. It seems very unfair to have banned her for life from the courts without any public process. I don't know how to say it more strongly. Well, I do, but I'm not going to say it more strongly than that. So anyway, I urge you to please reconsider, or maybe in the first instance, consider this. I don't know if this board has even considered the matter, but please consider it or reconsider it and reinstate her. Thank you.
And there are no more cards.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to our next item, on item 14A, a public hearing on resolution approving engineer's report confirming diagram, sorry, my computer just went off. An assessment and ordering continuation of assessment for fiscal year 2019-20 for the Jefferson Union High School District Maintenance Assessment District.
Ms. Saludin, I think we're doing.
Oh, am I missing?
13A.
Oh, I'm sorry, 13A. And I read all that.
And it was read very well.
Thank you. Okay, so moving on, sorry, 13A, we're doing discipline and attendance report. Director Basuino. No.
That was impressive.
That was impressive. I don't know about that.
Amp is still standing.
Wait, let me find a comfortable chair. Okay, there we go. Hello, good evening, members of the board. I'm so happy the Warriors aren't on tonight.
Perfect.
So I'm here today to just go over some of our discipline and attendance data for the last couple years. So just to provide you guys with some information regarding just the attendance and suspension data. And to cover off, the topics I'll be covering with the discipline will be to review the data from the past couple years and focusing, quite frankly, on disproportionality. And then attendance, this was our first year using attention to attendance. And so we want to see what we've learned from that and what's our baseline in hopes to really jump off and improve some future data that we've seen. Okay, so starting right off with the discipline. This first slide that you see is this is suspension data. And I just wanted to give you an idea of what the overview of where we are compared to other districts around our county. And if you look this up, when you look this up, you probably won't see it the same because when you look it up, it compares K-12. So we have to kind of change the data a little bit so it's focused on high school data only. So you're going to see a couple different comparisons there. And as you can see, we're not the worst, but we're not the best either. And then when you look at cumulative counts, just the number of students that have been enrolled, it doesn't matter how long, anytime between July and June for the school year. And total number of suspensions and then unduplicated counts are a student who's they only count the student once. And that's the same that they would use for CalPADS. Usually it does unduplicated counts. And the dashboard, unduplicated counts. And we've got this information from DataQuest. So if you look at the two schools that are similar to us but are doing very well, which would be San Mateo. Well, if you look at San Mateo, they're doing, we consider them doing pretty good. They have a high number, which is 9,000, but their percent is 3.7. And last year, they hired a specific person dedicated to working specifically with alternative to suspension. And it's my understanding that South City is looking to hire somebody for that specific reason as well for next school year. So that's where, people are putting their efforts is in the alternative to suspension. And just trying to work with kids in either restorative or somewhere else that they can, learn and progress in a positive way.
When you say hire some, like, what is that, is that person?
Yeah.
Is that a person that's training?
Yeah, good question. So the one for San Mateo, she actually runs their alternative to suspension.
So it's like a
yeah,
director
yeah.
or
So she, so if somebody gets suspended, if I'm the VP, I send her an email saying so-and-so got suspended, generally for drugs and alcohol. That's what her alternative's for specifically. And so then she will contact the family and they'll give them a choice. What do you want to do? And, they have classes, it looks like they have classes on Thursdays and Saturdays that she runs every week. The next slide is suspension for student subgroups. And this just kind of gives you a brief overview. And in this one, we included the charter school. The percentages are very slightly different if you take Summit out of it. But we included it in here. But you can see our challenges at this time. What's that? Charter Summit School?
Why did you include that?
Because I messed up. Yeah.
when I looked at the data, it goes off, it's only off by a couple point percentages. So instead of changing it, I thought I'll just leave it up there and let you know I included charter schools. There's so many buttons to press. So I like to confess. Anyway, so as you can see, our concerns really are English learners, which has been a rise in concerns lately. Socioeconomically disadvantaged students, and students with disabilities has always been a challenge, not just for us, but for all districts. So that just gives you a quick overview of the 2017-18 data. And this is the fun one. So this is kind of a percentage, it's percent suspension by ethnicity. So this is just the number of unduplicated students that were suspended by the total number of students in that ethnic group. So if you kind of look at this, you're going to see, you can see that the first one is African American. And if you've been with our district for a while, you know that we were in disproportionate for suspension rates of African American special ed students. So for the past 3 or 4 years, our focus has been really on that. And as you can see, when you put a focus on something, there's a change. So you could see that that's been a 50% decrease. But if you look over towards Hispanic, you can see that it's been the same. It's still at 9.4, 9.7, 9.6, but the number of students is a high number. So that's percentage out of 1368, so 368 students. And the suspension rate is 129 to 132 students. So even though it's kind of the same as, if you look at African American and, it's just kind of close, but when you look at that number separately, that's a big number of students being suspended. So that's definitely a concern of ours. Pacific Islander, for whatever reason, went up. That's a total number of students is 47, and the unduplicated suspension is 13. And then 2 more races, again, the numbers are the same, and it's staying at the suspension rate, staying at about 25 to 29 students. But I think that Hispanic Latino is definitely going to be a focus in the upcoming school years. And then this is another different way of looking at it. So this is percent of cumulative enrollment and percent of students suspended. So the red is, the blue is percent of cumulative enrollment. Again, I just want to remind you that it doesn't matter if the kid was here 1 day or 5 days or the whole school year. And then a percent of students of unduplicated suspensions. So, and this number of students is 4,601, and the number of unduplicated suspension is 328 in this slide. So as you can see, African American, even though it's 2.1, 5.1 of them were suspended, and that's a high number. Hispanic, 28.8, and then 42.2% of suspensions. So definitely a huge concern, something we should be focusing on. And if you go to the next year, so that's 2016-17, and then you look at 2017-18, just kind of get a little brief look at that. Sorry. There we go. So the number of cumulative students this time is 4,581, and the number of unduplicated suspensions is 290. So we did go down 38 suspensions for that, unduplicated, right, for that school year, but we went up with the Hispanic suspensions, even with going down. Went down with African Americans, but we went up with the Hispanic, Latino. And then this chart is another fun chart to look at. You can thank Corrine. We were deciding, do we put it in, do we not put it in? But anyway, so the findings on here just goes to show you, it's just comparing the two charts. And disproportionality gap decreased among African Americans, American Indian, and white. And then disproportionality gap increased among Asian, Filipino, Hispanic, Pacific Islander, and 2 or more. So the Asian and Filipino gap increased because the suspension number decreased. So, and the Hispanic increase in enrollment and increased in suspension. Pacific Islander and 2 or more, same enrollment, but an increase in suspension. So definitely things we need to be aware of. And then the next one is just to be able to look at some numbers. So, you know, we talked about unduplicated and total numbers. So this just gives you by school for 2017-18. So cumulative enrollment throughout the whole school year, total number of suspensions 131, but the unduplicated count is 92. So you see there's a disparity in the, when you look at unduplicated. And then just where they are percentage-wise for the 2000. But I would just wanted to show the number, the total number of suspensions compared to the unduplicated counts. Because sometimes when you just get the unduplicated, you think, oh, we're doing great, but not necessarily. You got to look at all the data. And then percent suspended by school. And just to show you the 15, 16, 16, 17, 17, 18 comparison. If you look at this, just looking at it quickly, you will notice that Oceania had a huge improvement back between 16, 17, 17, 18. And I can tell you that what Oceania had was they had an administration that had been in place for a very long period of time. They had John Newberger, who is solid background in restorative training and worked very closely and repetitively and nonstop with his staff to create a restorative environment. And that was very evident between those years. The other one to look at is Thornton. You can see there's been a big decrease. And that's Dr. Marenko's first year there, and he's been working very, very diligently with his staff and the students, and bringing in, support personnel from outside to really work with his students. So I think that's made a huge, huge change. And then when you look at the others, there hasn't been too much change. Westmore has gone up a little bit, but they've had some changes. Jefferson's been pretty equal. Terra Nova's been pretty equal. So these are, they're steady, but not good. Yeah, okay. So why look at all this data? So that we can create actions to reduce the suspensions with a focus on disproportionality, right? Like, that's why we look at data. So what are our actions? Well, our actions are to continue working with Circle Up to address issues with all school sites regarding implicit bias, school climate, site staff relationships, and site student staff relationships, and site student to student relationships. I know that Circle Up went in to work with Jefferson High School after they had an incident earlier in the school year, and worked with the students. I know that they've been working with Terra Nova students as well. And then work with school site administration to review data and determine needs and develop action plans that would include training of staff, because not everyone has the same needs. So you have to look at it by site. Some are very, you can use across all sites, but some of them could be site specific. I know that Terra Nova started looking at their data, not last year, but the year before, at the end of that year, 16, 17, and with their Terra Nova Climate Committee, and they decided that they needed to train their staff in positive behavior interventions. And so they took it upon themselves to use their funds to get a group of staff trained and to start train the trainer model. So that's something that we want to look at with all the schools, depending on who their committees are. Some of them have climate committees, some of them have culture committees, some of them have discipline committees, but everybody has a committee. And so the point is to sit down and look at that and say, what do we, and just show them the data and what can we do to support. Work with Circle Up in creation of a district restorative discipline matrix. I'm so excited about this. Circle Up has been working with Jefferson Elementary with this discipline matrix, and they will be meeting with our discipline admin team, I think next week, to review what they've started at Jeff Elementary and to see how it can be used at the high school level. And we're very, very excited about what they've been bringing, because most discipline matrix are, punitive. What's the consequence? And this is something completely different. And so I'm super excited about taking on that new adventure. School connection. It's about engaging in a supportive classroom, right? Kids who are engaged with a teacher, that are there because the teacher cares about them, are going to be less likely to disrupt the class. And I think it's important. That's where it comes with the Circle Up. If you're somebody that's happy to go to work, that's going to, that enjoys what you're doing, it's going to reflect on the kids. So I think this is something that we really need to help with our teachers about what can we do to support, right? It's not why would the kid be acting out? What is happening? And look at that instead of trying to respond with what type of punishment needs to occur. And then continue to examine root causes of disproportionality. That is just something that we definitely need to keep talking about. We need to talk about implicit bias. We need to look at the data the way it is exposed to us and not try to change it and come to, bring people to the table that can help us. Better communication between admin and staff. So this just means when a student is sent out or whatever, you get an email saying the student or whatever did something, there needs to be a response. Hey, I sat down with that student, I talked to the parent, I talked to the kid, this is what's going on. If you can keep that communication going and the teacher feels supported, then they're more likely to, keep the kid in the room the next time, or, those types of things. And it's all about how you communicate. And I have found that when that communication breaks, and because whatever, admin gets busy and they think they've done it, but they haven't really told anybody, and then people don't feel like they're supported. And that's not healthy. It's not healthy for the student, and it's definitely not healthy for the teacher, or very respectful. And then sharing best practice between sites about alternative suspensions. As you know, this is, you have to get very creative. I think Westmore this year did Saturday school, mostly to handle attendance, but also with a few behavior issues. It sounded like their admin got a pretty good show, but we'll see in the data for the next school year. But they were, it sounded very positive, and the parents were very supportive about it, because some parents have the weekends off, so they can ensure that little Johnny gets there. And then just working with teachers on tier 1 supports. It's easy for, us who aren't in the classroom to say, oh, you should do this or you should do that, but it's another thing just to keep reinforcing, keep helping, keep bringing more information to the table so that they have the skills to keep students in the room, because that's the most difficult part. Before I move on to attendance, do you guys have questions about Kalima?
Do we have questions about Kalima?
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure you do. I'm a strange dick. But, yeah, we
Right
can,
there.
we can open it up to the floor if anyone has questions.
Yeah, if you have questions about the discipline, because I know it's a lot of data.
I have some comments and questions, but I can hold it in.
Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Do you want to start, Trustee Oknobo?
Oh, yeah. Regarding the suspension, is this counting in-house suspension and?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Any form of suspension is?
Any
being
form
debated.
of suspension,
Okay, thank
yes.
Is there a threshold, I guess, for all, like, is there a, I guess, because all the sites have different needs, I guess, of the student. So is there like a threshold of a minimum of like, okay, this is the, if they do this is like required suspension, and then other than that, it's like a gray line because every school is different, or is it?
So that's a good question. So we do currently have a discipline matrix that we share with all the admin. So I think you're talking about that. I think
so,
that much, which they can look at. But a lot of times, because our administration is so new at all the sites, generally they reach out to me and say, hey, this happened, what can I do? I'm
The
looking
point
at
of
the
reference.
matrix and it says this, and I'm like, well, have you called the parent yet? What's this, what's that? You know, you don't have to make these judgments right away. Let's figure out, you know, why did it happen? Let's, everybody slow down. And then it's usually if the kid does that same thing again, because you've had all the support and you've done that, and then you go, okay, we tried to warn you the last time. But mostly because they're so all new, they really do tend to reach out to me before they suspend people.
Okay, so there's like a thought process, I guess,
Yes.
before they're not
Yeah.
just automatically like, okay, given the situation, because it's so fresh and so immediate, just, I mean, it's just kind of something to
Yeah,
think
yeah,
about.
and I think that's where this, this new discipline matrix is going to help, because it's going to be online, and you can just, you know, click on it, and it'll say, hey, have you tried these things? Did you look at this? You know, and it'll give you some restorative, you know, and it asks questions, which is great. Like, did you think about this? Did you think about this? Why did this occur? Instead of looking at the action, looking at what led up to the action.
Right. And
So.
then if Oceana is doing such a great job, can we kind of use them maybe as some form of tool for the other schools to say,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, and that's where I was saying that we
Yeah,
share
of
the,
us
share the
shared,
best
right.
practice. And John was really good about that. He would meet with the other VPs, and he would share anything that he shared with the site, he would share with us. And then him and Danny, who was at Westmore, would share. And so, yes, they were very good about sharing that. But yes, you're correct. Exactly. So that's where something like the matrix will,
Yeah, but the matrix is only going to be, and the tool is only going to be as good as the training, so.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, they have the matrix, but they still call you. I mean, we need to support our administrators so that they can,
Yeah.
so that they know how to use it.
They have the
so that
capacity.
confidence.
Mhm.
And, but, so the training is going to be really important.
The constant training. Mm-hmm, yes.
Might as well just, just one thing I want to point out is, you mentioned the skills to keep the students in the classroom is a major component. And having gone from, substitute teaching and gen ed to special education and co-teaching, there are always points of reference in our training as teachers, in the credential program, and even student teaching and on the job work, where you see it in real life and you're like, that's a teachable moment for staff. Don't do that, and do this differently. And we can review that, but you want to restore the space in the moment, and the longer you wait, and the higher these numbers pile up, and the more those patterns kind of manifest, it becomes a culture of discipline that people refer to, even students, like, oh, if you do this, they're going to do that. Or if you don't do this, they won't do that. So when you get to that point, right, these numbers do reflect the relative disparities, which is really important. But I think the nuance in it is what everybody's kind of referring to is you have a matrix that outlines what you're supposed to do. But that training I mean, we have professional development as teachers, maybe once a week at least as a collective, and then internally in departments. But as a special education teacher, I've noticed a lot of response to intervention is not implemented on a daily basis because teachers think they know what they don't know. And so I'm happy that Circle Up is able to kind of reinforce the professional development. And I think the professional learning communities and the kind of things that our district is doing at other levels, I would hope that it's kind of, I want to say like creating a different culture of understanding, but I don't think it necessarily is going to help people understand different cultures, which is kind of the heart of the problem and the solution that we're promoting. So I was going to reserve my comments maybe because like I want to see more of the data than I have seen, but thank you for going so far. This is helping to clarify, I think, some of the numbers.
So for me, like, I remember my first board meeting to now, like, it's been huge, so I remind myself of the progress, right, you know.
Exactly.
My first board meeting.
I wasn't in the hot seat then, that was
No,
Sherry.
No. So there has been a lot of progress, and I feel like pendulum was all the way one way, and so the solution was to just swing it all the way the other way, right? And so I'm trying to find the balance, like the happy medium, the balance. Because for me, you know, and listening to, we had our student advisory committee meeting yesterday, and a lot of the students talked about their lack of feeling safe, like they don't feel safe.
Yeah.
And they were wanting us to suspend the student, you know, wanting us. And so, for me, you know, so it's a couple things, like what is the threshold, or where are we trying to go with suspensions? Like, is it every year we're trying to keep lowering it, or is there like a area where we're saying, okay, as long as we stay within this area, we're fine? Because, you know, I'm not anti-discipline, you know, ask my kids. And I feel like there need to be consequences for actions that are immediate because of teenage brain, right? But at the same time, you know, how is it being dispersed? Is it being evenly done? And so that is, for me, the number of suspensions, unless it's, so the Pacific Islander number is the only number when we talk about the number of suspensions that bother me, right? Because 21% out of all Pacific Islanders, that seems like a lot. That's a big number.
Right.
The rest of the numbers don't really stand out to me that much. The numbers that are really bothering me are the percentage from each subgroup in relation to our overall enrollment. So even though we lowered the number dramatically for African American students, for example, it's still double, right?
Correct.
So, and then, or you look at the Hispanic and Latino number, again, it's pretty out of whack. But then on the flip side, you're looking at some of the other subgroups that are kind of getting away with murder here, right? I mean, it's, you know, they're doing it should be pretty evenly balanced. You know, it doesn't have to be perfectly aligned, but when you're looking at the percentage of students of certain subgroups versus how many times they're being suspended, some of these numbers are way too low. So to me, this is just kind of a data point that points to bias. And that, for me, is the most important thing. It's not so much as I don't want to administer discipline within our school. I just want it all to be evenly done. And so how can we do that? And how can we still allow our teachers to feel like they have control over their classrooms, that they're able to deal with the students who are stepping out of line, while at the same time making sure that due to either intentional or, you know, explicit or explicit, implicit or explicit bias, those items are being addressed. And so for me, that is a community discussion, and then I'm hoping that when we talk about this district restorative matrix, that we are doing that with teachers in the room, so that there's buy-in. Because we could come up with the most amazing matrix with the administration possible, but it all starts in the classroom. And if they're constantly being sent out of the classroom, you know what I mean? You know, and speaking as one of those students who prided herself on getting sent out of the classroom, I don't know if you believe it. like I would come up with a plan, like I know how to get under this teacher's skin.
Sure.
And I
Oh,
would,
absolutely.
you know.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. There were some kids I wouldn't suspend because I knew that's what they wanted to do.
Right, but at the same time, back when I went to high school, there was counselors, right? So the teacher could send me out of the class to see my counselor, who knew me and knew what I was doing and would put me back on track. So are there the proper supports? And they don't have to be the counselors, but, you know, I would love to have teacher and staff and administrative feedback. Are there supports in place to do some of the stuff that we're doing? You know, so there is some place for the students to go because, you know, my counselor got me through high school because she, you know, she was waiting for me on certain days. She was like, I had my tea ready because it's third period and I knew you were going to do the thing, right? And so
it comes down to connections.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
and personal connections.
Right, and I had, so again, when we talked about training and making sure that our security and everybody is involved, when the training happens, everybody's involved in the training, because it may be, and even like some of our custodial staff, like it may be kitchen staff or custodial staff or somebody who can make that connection with that student to get them back on track and said, you know, who are they showing up for?
Right.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so I just hope that all these things are taken in consideration because this is a really complex problem. And I'm glad that we did the work to look at, like, we can't teach students if they're not in class, but now it's like, you know.
Yeah, and you have to, like you said, you have to support the staff. And we got to make the students feel safe.
Right.
It's quite a conundrum.
It is a lot. Yeah,
Yeah.
it is a lot. So,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like, and again, I have to constantly remind and go back to like where I was when I started and when the numbers were insane, right? When I started, the numbers were insanely out of whack. Because even looking at a few years ago, you saw the disproportionate how far we've come. So I feel like there's a lot of great work that has been done, and I'm just very grateful. But now I'm very happy that to see the next step is really looking at, you know, how you know, having safety as a mindset, but also looking at culture and climate of our schools. So, yes, sorry.
So just a couple of things. No. If there was a gem comment tonight, I think it was from you actually, that it all starts in the classroom. So there are students who get suspended who are not trying to get suspended. I understand what you're trying to say, but we have students whose brains aren't fully developed yet. You know, they're children. And so one of the very first places we have to look, and as you said, Mr. Ochapinti, is how do we give engaging Tier 1 instruction? Because when students are engaged in class, when they're feeling successful, if they feel like they can learn, they're not going to act out in class. Okay, so we are doing some things in that area around the constructing meeting with the blended learning that's coming up and around Circle Up. So I'm really hopeful for all of that. There's another piece of it though, and I want to give credit to Doreen and Corrine for this, is that we haven't been really good about sharing data at the site level. It used to be kind of held up here at the district level. And the principals, as they become more experienced, are learning how to share that with their staff in a way that the staff can hear it and reflect on it and say, oh, we better do something about that. And coming from a place of, I care about my students, you know, I don't want them out of class. So I just want to acknowledge that's a big leap forward in this current year. The other thing is I had an opportunity, I called together my superintendents from South County who have high school students, because when I look at the data and I see Sequoia at 3.7% and we're at 6%, and actually San Mateo Union actually decreased down to 6%. So I had a real interest in, you know, what are you doing? I had a suspicion, I suspected that they were doing something for another group of students who were under the influence during the day. Drugs, alcohol, and vaping. And we're still at that place where we don't have the alternatives. You know, what do you do with a student that's not punitive? So we're still at the place that if a student's under the influence during the day, we suspend them. They're out because they're missing their educational program. It counts as a suspension, and then they come back. Now, what have we done? We haven't given them any kind of support on their, if there's an alcohol, drug, or vaping issue. We haven't helped them with that, and we've deprived them from their education during the day. So as I suspect, and that's what these positions are for, they're purely, I shouldn't be purely, but they're really taking a look at what is that first-time offense when someone's under the influence, rather than suspending them, we send them home sick, and they come back the next day and there's a contract signed by the parents, and those students are in some kind of a education program around drugs or alcohol or vaping. And so in those districts, I know it's a small sample number, but they're only seeing a 10% repeat. That would help those numbers. And so rather than being punitive and rather than making it harder for them to access their education, there's some kind of service that we're giving to the students and their families. A real important issue that we're going to need to do research on is the vaping. Is the vaping, all the apparatus is so much stronger than smoking cigarettes. Kids are hooked like that. And to expect, I mean, they get hooked and they come to school, they cannot possibly go all day without taking a hit. They can't do it. So where do they go? The bathroom.
Sure.
And if they get caught, what do? We suspend them. So this isn't just an education issue with the students, but it's the parents too, because the parents don't know what a JUUL looks like. They all look different. They all do. They have no idea. They think it's everyone else's kids who are doing it. And it's not just the kids living on the edge doing it. There are a lot of highly educated children who are still doing it because of all the media that's coming at them. So when we created that district wellness coordinator position with Melissa, that's one of the things. In fact, she and I met yesterday to do some priorities. She won't get everything on that list done in 1 year, but one of my priorities is to sit down with Doreen, with Mary Beer, and whoever else we need to sit down with and figure out what are going to be those educational supports so that students, rather than keeping them out for a week, they're back in school, but there's something that's going to happen with parents and students to help them not repeat that behavior again. Thank you. That was a mouthful. Thank you for listening.
Okay, that's good.
I agree
Continue.
with everything.
Anything else on suspension? Expulsion? All right,
moving right along. So again, this is data that we've gotten through A2A, and this is our first year working with them. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of excused versus unexcused 2018-19. Chronic is more than 10%, so 18 days of absences or more. Severe chronic is more than 20%, so 36 days of absences or more. So when you look at excused chronic, that's kids who have called in, are excused, it's 9.49%. Versus unexcused, kids that are just cutting or whatever, that's 7.69%. So if the 9.49% equals 407 students that have missed excused absence of more than 18 days. That's a lot of days and a lot of students. And then excused severe chronic and unexcused severe chronic. So your chronic severe are students with school avoidance issues that maybe have high anxiety or something to that, or obviously something severe going on at home. These are very, very difficult cases. But right now, for excused chronic, I think is where we really, really need to focus, and the unexcused chronic. So our current practice right now is we just accept excusals. Whatever the parent says, went to the doctor, had to leave early for Tahoe, we accept all of those. That's our current practice. And then, of course, there's illness, doctor's note, funerals. But it's just the practice where you can get students that'll be gone for like 2 months because they've left the country and they're going back to visit family or something to that effect, or they want to beat the traffic to Disneyland. So that is just some numbers I want to share with you. Chronic absenteeism by site. So just kind of giving you a little overview so that you can see all the numbers. And just, so Thornton, I just want to push out Thornton. I'm not too sure that's a correct number. I don't know how, and I'll have to work with Denny about how HOA is collecting their data, because they take attendance a little bit differently there. I showed it to Denny, and he was like, no way. But he doesn't really have anything right now to show me. So I'm going to have to work with him and HOA to figure out what exactly they're looking at and how they're taking attendance, because they take positive attendance, so it's a little bit different. But the rest of the schools, as you can see, Jefferson is at 11%, and this is average throughout the school year. So some days have been less, and then some have been more. So this is an average school year number. Oceana 1.6%, Terra Nova at 0.61%, and then Westmore at 7.18%. And then if you look at the next page here, this is, I just gave you, A2A sends me conference notes about once a month about where the schools are conferencing at. And so when a conference occurs, that means that a student has a certain number of missed days, either chronic, excused, or unexcused, and they get a letter and it says, hey, we need to have a conference. And a conference for right now is any sort of communication that a person does in person with a parent or a guardian. It's very difficult to ask parents to take time off to come to school. It's really difficult for them to do that. I think if we had, as we progress farther into, if somebody's attendance starts to affect grades and things like that, or there's another issue, then we have student support teams where you would invite the parent and then you would discuss the whole thing. But these are just conferences that either a vice principal, a principal, or a dean of students, or even a counselor has had with the parent, and they've closed the conference. And they said, yes, I've talked to them. They understand their child should be here. They understand that there's an effect on their grades and how important it is. And we had a conversation, a healthy, safe conversation, like, what do you need from us? Why, and you find out a lot of stuff from parents when you reach them in a very soft, positive way. We're here to help you. What do you need from us? And so those are the types of conversations that were happening this school year, and the objective was to just, because it's the first time we're doing this, the parents were really like shocked to get some of these letters, and so it was nice to have that communication. And a lot of times they called us. It's like, hey, I got this letter, and so our letters are very nice. They're not very aggressive. As a matter of fact, some of our deans would like them to be a little bit meaner, but I'm still holding off on that. Let's be nice first. And so that's what we're working on. As you can see, let's see. Go back. Just super happy with the dean at Terra Nova. And I'm hoping she has worked very collaboratively with their counselors, and I think that's made a big difference compared to the other school sites, just keeping the total numbers down. So if you look at Terra Nova at the top, just their total numbers is 24. So, and if you look at the lower numbers, those are up in the 250s, 320s. And it's, I think the issue is not only just numbers, but just the fact that their entire front office, counselors, deans, knew what the objective was from the very beginning, and were willing to share information and communicate in a positive way. So I think that's, on our list of of things to do, which is, again, share best practice. We've got a team that's working well. So our actions to reduce chronic absenteeism is develop consistent messaging of importance of positive school attendance. So I'm really going to be working with the principals about just reminding, little reminders to parents, hey, I know the holidays are coming up, but it's really important that we finish out the school day, the school year strong, just things like that, just to remind them how important it is to be at school and to thank them for getting their kids to school, because we know it's a struggle. Teenagers aren't happy to get up early in the morning. Commiserate with the parents. Share best practice between the sites, VPs, deans, and counselors. And I think that's the key, is just really pulling in the guidance counselors. Clear attendance protocols regarding student and parent outreach involving administration, deans, guidance counselors. So we have student support systems, SSTs, and just looking at data and using it. It's there, it's easy to use. That's the beauty of A2A. I think Jefferson, when I started working with them, once they settled with their administration, once Keisha came back and I worked with their dean, they didn't realize how easy it was to use, and they cleared up a lot of conferences a lot quicker, because they thought, oh, I'm going to have to go to this system and then go to this system, when it's like two presses of a button. So I'm really appreciative of A2A making it so simple. And then data entry. I think that's super, super important. We have some schools that are very diligent about their clerks, their attendance clerks, doing very, very good data entry. And then we have some schools that are struggling on that. So we'll be working and bringing in the attendance clerks a lot more to make sure that they're sharing best practice so they can reach out to each other. And then encourage teachers to outreach to parents. That's the key. That's the people they have a connection with. If they can use whatever mode of, I don't care if it's smoke signals or seeing somebody at Safeway, that's the connection the parents, the teachers are going to remember, and the parents are they're going to really appreciate, because those are the people they have a connection with. So I think just reminding teachers they're the tier 1 support. I know some schools have deans, but if you can handle it within the classroom and reach out and say, your daughter's been missing for 2 days, is there something I can help you with? That is a huge offer that I know parents really appreciate. And that's it. Questions? Look at that little Kareem.
I have a question, yeah. And regarding with the teachers, are they trained to talk to students about absences or just any issues with them, or are they just?
I don't know
What
about
was
any
teachers?
specific training, but I think it's important that at the beginning of the school year, we remind them that this is, we sent out an email last year and a letter, so we showed it to all the teachers to tell them this is our focus. So that's good. We should remind them again at the beginning of the school year, and that they're the first line of defense, right?
Yeah.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
Say that, thank you for the presentation and a lot of the data on it. It's always good to see, like, I guess bottom line, how much students are out of the classroom, whether it's by self-selection or extenuating circumstances or by suspension. And yeah, just to kind of echo, like, a lot of these things are things that can be solved in the classroom, and some of them are I think reflective of obviously conditions in our community that are beyond our campuses, but that we can start to work getting beyond by making home calls, but also by just creating that communication with students to, like, kind of feel their concerns. And I mean, as a case manager, you can hear that from your students. Most teachers don't have 150 students plus, right? So doing that kind of case management is like, unless you have an advisory, unless there's some kind of institution within the schools to kind of track that and monitor, it is really hard to keep up with, and students will. I don't want to sound cliche, but I mean, unless you fall through the cracks, they just won't show up after all, because they know they can stay off radar. And staying off grid is a survival skill. Sometimes getting out of the grid is a coping tactic, but there are other staff that students do relate to. And I think building relationships is one of the cores of just education. And one thing I would ask is then, with Circle Up, I know we talk about the progress of different schools and these things. The discipline the restorative matrix, district restorative discipline matrix. This is something that comes up in other schools and other conversations with the teachers at times. And one of the things, the biggest frustrations is like, say, technology and cell phones. And really, it's not the cell phone itself. That's just a device. But it's what the cell phone can do. It's a social interactive tool between peers, between teenagers and the world, which is problematic on several levels. We have, say, our middle schools in the area where they're giving one-on-one Chromebooks and then getting filters and making sure that our students are safe when they're navigating the web. By the time they get to high school, they'll have self-selected their own social matrices, and then how to navigate those, and everything from vaping to anything else you can think of, which we've dealt with. My question would be, how are we engaging technology in a healthy way, or maybe even doing training with teachers on how to navigate cell phone policy? Students, when they're disengaged, their first point of reference, if it's not a friend, is going to be their cell phone. And if you can't compete with the internet, but if you can't relate to a student who is thinking that they can relate to something on the internet, including ads and things that promote the kind of things that we're trying to educate our students are not all the hype, that becomes the issue, I think, in terms of discipline. How do we create that restorative culture? Part of that culture is pop culture, is what are they looking at and what is it that's drawing them away? It could be something as simple as just a video game, but what kind of cell phone policies or what kind of trends are you seeing maybe with other districts? And I would kind of redirect this to the superintendent as well. In terms of cell phone policy, outside of just law and legal guidelines in terms of confiscation of cell phones and et cetera?
Well, I think all the schools handle it a little bit differently. So at Westmore, their cell phone policy is they don't want to see the phone between 8 and 3, between periods, at lunch, in the classroom. They don't want to see it. At Terra Nova, you can see the phone out between periods and at lunch. So each school kind of handles their own policy, and the responses are different for each school.
Do you feel like those responses, obviously they differentiated for different reasons, but do you feel like they could be streamlined? There's a way you can have discussion around equity and how to navigate that. And is navigating that within the frame of socioeconomic conditions. Cell phones are a great equalizer. People may not have the nicest clothes, but they still have a cell phone and social capital, so they're always going to go back to what they have and the power they have, and I feel like students rely on their cell phones for social survival. But is there a way we can approach that you're hearing those discussions? Or
I think that would be something that the schools, when they have their own committees to look at what their challenges are through their data, if they have a lot of kids that are getting suspended or kicked out of class because of cell phone use, or if they're having, then that might be something that they would look at. If their committee is saying, hey, I can't get my kids off the phone in the classroom, then that might be something that they decide, hey, this is our challenge. Maybe we need to pull our parents in and communicate with them how important it is and to help support us. But I think that would be something that you would look at per site and figure out if that's an issue, and then go from there.
question then would be, do you feel like this is an issue that Circle Up is addressing or will be prioritizing?
In regards to cell phones?
Addressing cell phones, yes, absolutely.
No, we haven't talked to them about specific discipline issues. I think what we've been mostly focusing on is the school culture and implicit bias and things of that nature. If something specific comes up, like I told you that issue at Jefferson about a month and a half ago, they were great to come in and just go, okay, let's talk to your kids real quick, let's figure out what's going on and see how we can and taught the admin team how to do a restorative circle with that particular group. But it's only if a specific issue has been brought up, and I can't speak for all of them, I don't know, but I don't know of anybody that brought up cell phone issues to the Circle Up group. Okay.
And so just really quickly, I know you said that this was like an average of a whole year, but are there patterns? Like, or do we see in attendance a pattern of?
Yeah, that's the beauty of A2A. You can actually look at the year on a calendar and see where the patterns occur, and mostly through the holidays. Yeah, huge. Like you can see, like I think finals it looks pretty good, but, leading up to it and after the finals, it's like red, like you could really see it. But they do have that on a calendar where you can just see where it really, really hits. And you can do it by the district or you can do it by site.
So I'm wondering, like, during those times, if there could be targeted communication, now we have a communication director.
Exactly.
To really like, hey, this
I
time is
wrote, I
coming up.
wrote that down,
Okay.
actually, yeah.
Yeah, you get the waves.
Right, because I assume that, because I know one of the huge issues was the calendar being misaligned, and now that we've aligned the calendar up, like, are there other outside factors?
Yeah.
And then my other thing is just, again, to continue to be big tent on, like, we're saying, let's involve the teachers in, but I'm saying, like, coaches, like,
Right, yeah, there's so
extracurricular-
many other support staff.
Right,
Mhm.
that if, because I know, well, there are kids that are going to cut class, but then come back to go to their sport, right? So is there a way that we
Yes.
can communicate to coaches or something when there's certain specifics? So the person that, or if there's a trend and the student is always going to this class, like, is there a way that we can get that student or that teacher to be the one to kind of do the outreach and say, it's great that you always come to fourth period, but you need to also, like, could we try to? Yeah, or.
Whole student,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
But, and that's all that I had on the attendance. I'm glad that we started this first step and, it's good to see where we're gonna move forward.
Yeah.
Yes.
So again, we talk about the tier 1. If students are engaged and have a relationship with the teacher, I couldn't understand. I had this one student who came every day first period, but had all these these absences in other classes during the day that made no sense to me. So there is something that could be done at the classroom level. So we're gonna have to work closely with teachers about that. Long ago, in days of yore, I used to make phone calls the first time a student was out and it wasn't cleared. I made one in April to a parent, and she was, well, she's getting an A- in your class. And I go, but it's really hard for students, number one, to be out for 3 or 4 days and then to come back and get back in the groove. It's really hard on them. And I don't know what message we're sending to students about careers in life that you can, and so having some of these conversations with parents, not in a judgmental way, but in a, parent-to-parent kind of way is really helpful. So we've got to work on that tier 1. And this is why differentiation is important. So I'm really concerned about excused chronics at 9%. That means that we have parents who are okay with their students missing 18 days of school. That's 2 days a month.
Sorry, is there any way to, that was going to be my question, like to limit, like have a threshold, like this is excused or this is not excused, or you could, because we're saying, well, we just accept all excused absences as long as it's, I guess.
We follow the
approved
ed
or-
code on what we can excuse.
Okay,
So that part
okay.
we're doing okay. And I missed my train of thought. There was something that you asked before. No, there was something you said that I wanted to.
Total number. Is there a total number that we could?
But I think a lot of this is educating parents. So in my former districts, we had chronic rates that high too of excused. And when you start to work with the parents on, look, it isn't just about coming to school and learning, it's about teaching habits that are going to be productive for the rest of their life. But we need to, so one of the things we have in our priorities is that tier 1 that's engaging, inclusive, differentiated. And so we do have students who can come to school and they're really bright, and if the teacher isn't differentiating instruction, enriching when they need to, you're going to have students who, they can sit at home, read the textbook themselves, do the work, and they're getting excused, and they're getting A's and B's in their classes. So we have to work with the teachers on that. And where I have an ask of all of you, because I'm still shocked. But typically in a county, there's a way that at the school level, you go ahead and I know what I was going to say. Back to so what we're doing with A2A, it sends letters out according to what the state requires us to do. So after so many excused or unexcused, you get that letter, and it doesn't matter. So I wanted to say we do have thresholds for that.
Okay.
But anyway, so back to my ask.
Oh, perfect.
Back to my ask. So if we have schools working on attendance at the school level, and they're doing the conferences. You saw the conference rate was at about 51.6%. We need to get that up to 90%, but this is our first year. That's right. So we're happy with that. But then we moved to having our school level attendance teams for students who are in trouble. And then typically the school district has some kind of a SARB process. And you help parents along and you try to figure out what the barriers are, why aren't you getting your child to school and whatever. And then when that doesn't work, there should be something at the county level that sometimes even puts parents in front of the district attorney. Because it's not, if the student's not coming to school, there are some things that prevent kids from coming to school, and sometimes it's the parent. But we have nothing, okay? So we're going to continue to excuse because it's the what if. Well, what if I don't bring them? And we have no answer for that other than, well, it's not a habit, it's not good social emotionally for your child. Ultimately, so my ask is, and I've given this to our superintendent, McGee, and go, look, we got to have be something where districts can go for the extreme cases. So that'd be something I'd ask you to push, go to your various circles and on that. Thank you. Good job.
Oh, how about the excuse chronic? I know families who they're all for public education. They make sure they're in school because they want that ADA. But when it's time for vacation, to pull them out, it's time. They're going to the Philippines.
Cheaper flight.
They have no problem with that because they're and that they're from their teachers. And it, how do you, with them? To me, that's the
Yeah.
If it was only days, we're talking 18 days. 18 days. Wow.
Yeah, I think too, I think the cultural something that we need to take into consideration because there is a of parents that is back to the Philippines, and even for me, like it wasn't until I got the letter that I was like, wow, that is I didn't realize because I was pulling kids out of school for things that I felt was important, political events or something like that I would take with me. And it wasn't until I think there's a combination of that can be used, but in a cultural, I think maybe having some and teachers on what it does to their learning or how it interferes if they're gone for an extended period of time would be helpful. The district attorney, I am that kind of. Anytime we talk about law, I get my antennas go up because I feel like it's always disproportionately administered, and that the state of California already has data showing that, Kamala Harris is having to defend herself constantly against the law because the data is showing that it's being disproportionately used against people of color, and that, I remember just the excuse. What excuse is an acceptable excuse and what excuse is not acceptable is really a cultural thing. And there's just a lot of things that I see get excused and I'm like, why did that get excused? And it's just something that you can relate to more. So I think that just to be careful with that and to really look at the cultural implications of, work, babysitting.
Yes.
Yeah. Like if a parent is using their oldest child as a babysitter, what.
I think what Dr. Deloria is talking about is months of us meeting with the parent and looking at all those issues first, and then knowing at that time there's still a resistance.
Yeah.
Even though we've put all these other things in place.
No. I understand that. Yeah.
But it's trying to figure out the why with every kid, and it's all different with all of them. And that's if they're being honest with us because they have to trust us first.
Yeah.
So,
So you know that Dr. Marenko this year hired a social worker to help with some of that. But I talked with Mr. Bashirs about that too. He has a big amount of Title I money. And I think having a social worker at his school would be helpful to kind of get to some of those issues, so that if a parent needs daycare, how can we connect them with daycare that isn't one of their own children?
Right.
So I mean, you saw what Jeff's numbers are, so, you know.
parents are working 2 or 3, 4 jobs.
And if.
Kids are working
And,
too,
or
so-
if, like their ability to take off of work, right? And then if their youngest child is sick, you know, because I know that used to be my experience with 4 younger sisters. My mom's like, so-and-so is sick, I can't go to work, so you're staying home and watching her. So, you know, just making sure that all those things are taken into consideration, but I agree that. I wish there was another level of resource outside of our district.
Have enough work to do here.
Yeah.
Focus on that.
Well, thank you so much, that was great. Okay, now we're moving to 14A. There was a practice run earlier. Okay, so the public hearing and resolution approving the engineer's report, confirming diagram and assessment, or continuation of assessment for fiscal year 2019-20 for our district and the maintenance district. Okay, turning it over to Ms. Van Raffors.
Thank you, Ms. Salahuddin. This item before you is an annual item that comes up for our maintenance assessment district for continued assessment for the fiscal year of 1920. It does require a public hearing before the approval of the resolution.
So opening the public hearing. Blue cards? No? Okay. No. Okay, gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. There you go. Well, it's no one in here. No one cares how hard I hit that gavel. So, can I get a motion to?
Annie's gonna watch this.
That's why I said that. Gavel's always so weird to me. Okay, so a motion to approve the resolution.
Move to approve resolution number 18/19-26.
Second?
All in favor? Aye. Thank you. Okay. So the next item on the agenda is budgetary increases and transfers for year end, resolution 2018/19-28. Ms. Van Raffors?
Thank you. This item is another annual event. It allows our county office superintendent to offset any over expenditures in any expenditure account. If we were to, for instance, overspend the food service account, it would allow them to transfer money for us to make sure we aren't in violation of any regulations.
Transfers at year end.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, moving on to 14A3, approval of resolution 1819-27, authorizing the execution, delivery, and sale of certificates of participation to finance the key development costs relating to district properties. Ms. Van Raffors?
Thank you. And so this is what Mr. Scott and Mr. Adams have been waiting here for. So they're here to answer any questions if you have
You want to
some.
hear about it?
So over the past few months.
Billing us?
As you know, the board and our ad hoc facility subcommittee have been exploring the earning potentials for our district properties that are not fully utilized. And this financing would allow the district to begin our next steps in this process. The financing would be paid back by the proceeds earned on the property. And so it's recommended that the board approve the documents to go along with this resolution. Do you want me to talk a little bit more about it? I know we've talked about it in other instances, that's why I just don't want to take time if you don't have questions or.
Briefly.
There you go.
All right. So specifically, we would use this funding to go through the entitlement process for Serramonte Del Rey and prepare the land to be more marketable. At the same time, we would use it to do the pre-construction process for our new district office. And like I said, again, then once the land is all entitled, we would be able to market it and find a developer that would be able to then offer us joint use agreement or a land lease or something like that, that would then generate the funds to pay back this loan and to finish the construction of the district office.
Any other questions?
Move to approve resolution 18/19-27. Second.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right, thank you, guys. Okay, moving on to the next, 14A-A.4 Education Protection Account. Ms. Van Raphorst.
Thank you. So each year we must report on how we've used the education protection funding that was authorized by the voters in November of 2012. And so the estimate for the amount of money that we'll receive this current school year is $841,726. And then for the coming school year, the estimate is $824,366. And as you can see by the attached report, this was spent entirely on salaries for educational purposes. So the board needs to approve these expenditures.
Any questions? Make a motion to approve the expenditures?
Motion to approve the expenditures.
Second?
Second.
All in favor? Aye. All right, moving on to, item 14.
I'm gonna watch this.
I know, but my laptop isn't plugged in, so it keeps turning off. Item 14A.5, reserves in excess of state minimum level. Ms. Van Raphorst.
Thank you. So this item does not require action, but it does require a public hearing separate from the public hearing on the budget, and that's why it's in this section. What this states is that we are going to exceed the minimum reserve level required, and each year that we exceed the minimum, we need to just have a statement explaining why. We have the minimum requirement is only 3%, and as a responsible school district, we want to keep our reserves higher than that so that we can not put the district in financial distress. We do have some of the money assigned for textbooks in the coming years for textbook adoptions, and also for the increases to PERS and STIRS, and for that reason, as well as just making sure that we're being fiscally prudent. The attached reports outline our excess reserves that are anticipated.
Any questions? Seeing no blue guards, I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
Sorry.
Okay, I know. It's just loud unnecessarily.
I appreciate that you're not banging on.
I
the
know.
door.
It's dainty. I love it.
It's just.
Thank you for not
With
doing
no
it.
problem, because I was just like, I don't even get why we have a gavel. So can I get a motion to approve the reserves?
Oh, you don't need
Oh,
to.
we don't need to
approve it.
move it? We
No,
don't
we
need
just
to move it?
needed to have the public hearing.
All right, just having a public hearing, moving on. So, item 14A-6.6, the 2019-2020 budget public hearing. Ms. Van Raphorst.
Thank you. So tonight, the board will see the budget that's proposed for 1920, as well as the subsequent years' multi-year projection. And the board can provide comments tonight and have the public hearing, and then it will be brought for adoption at our next board meeting. So I have provided an executive summary that goes over the main points. I'll just highlight a few things. The LCFF funding formula is only providing the COLA for this coming school year, which is 3.26%, which means that we will stay in a community-funded or basic aid status because our property taxes will exceed that amount. But we will be seeing a decrease in the one-time discretionary funds. So over the past multiple years, the state has been working on paying off the outstanding mandate debt to school districts by giving one-time discretionary funds. This current year, it was $184 per student that we received. And even though there are still outstanding mandates to be paid back, there is no one-time funds allocated for 1920. And so that comes to us above and beyond our property taxes, so we will not see that in this coming year. I also just wanted to point out that one thing that was in the governor's budget is a decrease in the STRS contribution rate. So rather than going up to 18.1% in 1920, as it was projected, it's only going to go up to 16.7% in 1920, but then up to 18.1 in 2021. So it postpones for a year going up to that top rate. So with those pieces of information, we will have a supplemental amount that stays about the same for each year. So the amount of our funding that should be spent on our unduplicated students to improve services, it hovers around $3.1 million per year. And because we're remaining in community-funded status, we won't be seeing a supplemental tax. So I think we've talked about in the past that the supplemental tax comes to us in the year after a revenue limit year. And for that reason, since we won't be moving into revenue limit, we won't be seeing that supplemental tax. So therefore, this current year, our excess above the LCFF formula was 1.2 million, or about 4.5% of our expenditures. And in the coming years, if our projections for tax increases hold, that gap will grow unless the state does something different to the base formula. So this chart shows that the LCFF entitlement is what the state says we should get for our district with our size of students, our number of students, and then our property taxes come in higher than that. And as the years go by, if LCFF is only growing by COLA, by cost of living, and our property tax income is growing by greater than that, then that gap will grow, which means that we will be in more precarious situation, because we will always get what the state, that's like a guaranteed amount. But if the property taxes fall off, there's no safety net other than what the state has guaranteed us. And so as that gap grows, we'll need to just be more careful and watch things more closely. So in the multi-year projection, we are planning for the completion of the COP for the Daly City Youth Health Center. So we have one more year left to pay on that. So that only shows up in the 1920 year, and it doesn't show up in the following 2 years. Some other things that are of note: we have a 5% salary increase for 1920 that is reflected here, and then no salary increase for 2021 or 21-22, because those are still open for negotiations. So any settlement in those areas will change these multi-year projections. Our ending fund balance that's projected for 1920, combined with our Fund 17, which is our special reserve fund, leaves us with a 6.4% projected reserve. And then the only other thing I think to note is that the general fund for transferred to child nutrition has been $150,000 to $180,000 per year for the past few years. And I'm projecting moving it to $100,000 for 1920, and then having no contribution beyond that, because I think once Chartwell's gets rolling, we'll be able to have a program that pays for itself. And so this is the The budget is presented to you, will be brought back for adoption at the next board meeting, and then we'll be doing adjustments until our first interim in November, where you will see how our hiring impacted the budget, as well as what the state finally ended up determining when they adopt their budget at the end of June. Any questions? Thank you.
It's also just kind of reflective of the reserve needs to be reflective of the gap. Right.
That's a healthy practice.
Yeah. Which is new for us going forward because we've never had to worry about the basic aid, gap between the basic aid and base funding. And also an incentive to increase base funding. So, yeah. All right, so we need to have a public hearing, open a public hearing. Saying no, okay, great, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing.
This is the most timid I've ever seen you.
I don't like it, so.
Think of it as Thor's hammer.
Oh, God. That'd be completely different.
Oh, gosh.
Okay.
Are you worthy?
Thank you for all the work on this, Tina, it's been great. Okay, so the next item is the public hearing on our local control accountability plan. Ms. Baca.
Good evening, President Salam, Dean, good evening, members of the board.
That's all right. Sorry, Andy's been abdicated, it's fine.
Presented before you is the LCAP document for public hearing that includes this budget overview for parents that is required by the state of California. And just to let you know that this is the last year of the 3-year cycle of the LCAP, and that there are expected changes in the next year's LCAP template again. And just to remind you, when we started in 13-14, our LCAP was 45 pages, and now it's 188 pages plus attachments.
Wait, so they're changing the template again, why?
Supposedly to make it friendlier for stakeholders.
Okay.
So we'll see. So some of the changes in the metrics in the LCAP this year is the addition of the teacher and administrator retention rate. Also the performance indicator review metrics such as the CAS scores for students with disabilities and longitudinal performance of students in the PSAT 9, PSAT 10, 11, and the SAT. There are several changes in the goals, actions, and services. And one of the main changes is promoting equity and access, and also things that include cultural relevance and inclusion in the curriculum and instruction aspect of the district. We've also provided some stipends or sections to staff to assist with strengthening Tier 1 instruction. We've also provided professional development for guidance counselors, and then develop strategies for Tier 1 support in student behavior and discipline in the classroom, as what Ms. Basrito talked about earlier. There's quite a few changes, but those are some of the things I wanted to highlight. And this document will be brought back for adoption in the next board meeting. And that is it.
Any questions? Seeing nobody running up to the mic, just go ahead and close the public hearing. Thank you. All right, and like I said, at this weekend, even though, it was hundreds of pages to read, I did enjoy reading it. And I am very thankful about the willingness to accept a lot of the suggestions that we had in the LCAP. It was nice to see that those were incorporated in. And I'm excited for the new iteration and seeing how we can flesh those out. So thank you so much. I know I can't imagine how much work this has been, so I'm very appreciative. All right, so consideration of future agenda items. Any items we want to add on the agenda for the future? So the one thing is the next student advisory committee meeting, which I believe is on the 19th. 17th, one of those days, is going to be their training meeting. And so I don't know if Tina, if you're around to do budget on that day, but I can.
June 7th? You're out of town.
Okay. Okay, no worries. So we could just do it. No, it's okay. So if you, we could just do an overview of the budget if you're not, it would just be nice. And we could bring them in later to meet you, but I figure that usually more students are around at this time of the year, and then so trying to do it later in the year, I think we're gonna miss a lot of them. So that was the only thing. All right, so are we adjourning in memory of anyone? Yes.
Superintendent evaluation.
Yes, we're still having the 11th for the superintendent eval, and everyone has that on the calendar. We're all good.
What time was it at 6?
I believe it was at 6.
6, okay,
Okay.
yes, on my calendar.
Okay, great. Can I get a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, let's go home.
All
Thank
right,
you.
Well done.
Yahoo.
Well done, Kalima. Well
I
done.
know.
What we have.
Meeting adjourned.
Give me that.
I know. She